From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. announced that the Court of Appeals has issued another freeze order on hundreds of bank accounts, assets, and aircraft linked to anomalous government flood control projects. President Marcos said the CA freeze order covers properties associated with Silver Wolves Construction Corporation and Sky Yard Aviation Corporation, as well as individuals such as Benguet, Representative Eric Yap, and ACT CIS Party List Ed Vic Yap. President Marcos said the freeze order covers not only corporate assets but also personal accounts of individuals linked to the alleged scheme, noting the scale of the transactions involved. The president underscored the extent of the seized assets, emphasizing the government's efforts to safeguard public funds while investigations remain ongoing. The chief executive noted the breadth of properties and financial instruments covered. President Marcos also provided an update on the ongoing legal proceedings involving officials linked to anomalies in the flood control project, emphasizing that the government is moving to hold all responsible parties accountable. President Marcos underscored the administration's commitment to ensuring accountability and recovering public funds, stressing that the investigation will continue until justice is served.
Mga kababayan ko, naglabas na ang Court of Appeals ng freeze order laban sa mga bank account, ari-arian at sasakyang panghimpapawid na may kaugnayan sa mga anomalyang flood control project na iniimbestigahan ngayon ng gobyerno. Sakop ng freeze order ang mga account at ari-arian ng Silver Wolves Construction Corporation at Sky Yard Aviation Corporation, pati na rin ang mga personal account at asset ng mga individual na nasangkot sa investigasyon. Kabilang ay si Congressman Eric Yap at Ed Vic Yap. May mahigit 16 billion na ang pumasok sa mga transaksyon ng Silver Wolves mula 2022 hanggang 2025. Nakaramihan ay may kaugnayan sa mga flood control project ng DPWH. Kabuuang 280 bank account ang na-freeze, 22 insurance policy, 3 securities account, at 8 sasakyang panghimpapawid, kabilang ang mga eroplano at helicopter na konektado sa Skyyard Aviation. Kailangan natin ang mga freeze order na ito para hindi maibenta ang mga ari-arian at para maibalik natin sa ating mga kababayan ang bawat pisong pinaghihinalaang ninakaw. Meron ding 8 taga-DPWH sa Davao Occidental na nagpadala na ng sulat na sila ay magsusurrender sa NBI dahil sa hinaharap nilang mga kaso. Inaasahan na rin nating lalabas ang warrant of arrest na ni Sara Diskaya itong linggong ito at hindi na rin magtatagal ang pag-aresto sa kanya. Magpapatuloy ang investigasyon, magpapatuloy ang pagpapanagot at titiyakin ng pamahalaan na ang pera ng bayan ay maibabalik sa taong bayan.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has emphasized the importance of regulating the use of artificial intelligence or AI amid the proliferation of fake news and a surge in cyberbullying cases. In the 6th episode of his podcast, aired Tuesday, President Marcos lamented that AI technology is being used to harm others and put them in a bad light. President Marcos also admitted that legislation is always years behind technology, acknowledging that most of the lawmakers are not tech-savvy enough to understand emerging emerging technologies such as AI. He said he even drafted a list of ways AI can be utilized to improve key sectors such as infrastructure, education, and renewables, but noted that the list keeps getting longer the more he studies it. During the podcast, President Marcos was briefed about the other forms of cyberbullying, including cancel culture, which takes a toll on people's mental health. President Marcos stressed the need to ensure that netizens do not revolve their lives around social media.
I was doing making a list of subjects around AI that I wanted to discuss during the ASEAN. So sinimulan ko, simple lang, AI and education, AI and infrastructure, AI and renewables. Walang katapusan yung listahan. It does not end. The longer you want, the more time you spend on it, the longer that list will become because it's going to touch everything. And it's important for us to understand it. That's why it's not so easy. May kasabihan yan eh. Legislation is always years behind technology. And the reason is, generally, legislators do not immediately understand technology. Meron medyo techie na nakakaintindi, pero karamihan hindi. So, what will you legislate? What's the best way for the Philippines to take full advantage, to maximize the use of AI? The other side of the equation is, what are the things na kailangan bantayan natin? Ayan na, yung mga fake news, yung mga misinformation, yung mga disinformation, etc., etc. In the Philippines, we are one of the greatest users of the internet. Maybe it's just my own experience. But some of the people that bullied me in school became some of my best friends. They really did. Oh, di ba? Naging kaibigan mo eh. Okay naman talaga eh. Yun lang, siguro, nakita ko, gusto ko lang buwisitin, di ba? That's the only conclusion I can arrive at. Yun ang buong buhay ng kung sino man yun, ano? Basta yung buong buhay niya is online. So what goes online, that's the only important, that's only things, not what goes on in real life.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. said that speaking with the youth provides fresh perspectives and valuable insights that help leaders keep pace with rapidly changing societal trends. The president had an informal conversation with students, one each from the University of the East or UE, Polytechnic University of the Philippines or PUP, and West Visayas State University or WVSU. President Marcos emphasized the importance of engaging with young people, noting that they offer new ideas, a better sense of what is happening on the ground, and perspectives that challenge traditional ways of thinking. In the past PBBM podcast episodes, President Marcos sat down with veteran broadcast journalists. The latest episode shifted the discussion toward a more informal and youth-focused exchange that highlighted the voices and concerns of young Filipinos.
I much prefer talking to young people, actually, because I always, of course, there are people in your life na talagang kailangan pinapakinggan mo. But, you know, with the way things are moving, talking to young people is there's always something new. There's always something, but there is always something new. But they are the people who tell us what's going on. You know, this is what's happening. You know, they'll take away. Matagal na nag-paradigm shift ito. You have to think in another way. So, I like it. I enjoy it.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. pushed for the swift passage of key reforms, including the anti-political dynasty measure, Independent People's Commission Bill, amendments to the party list system, and a bill strengthening accountability on public finance. President Marcos, in a meeting with the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC at the Malacañang Palace in Manila, ordered Congress to prioritize the four bills, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said. Castro added that President Marcos had instructed the Senate and the House of Representatives to take a closer look at the four priority measures and ensure their passage as soon as possible.
The President directed Congress to prioritize the following proposed legislative measures: Anti-Dynasty Bill, Independent People's Commission Act, Party List System Reform Act, Citizens Access and Disclosure of Expenditures for National Accountability or CADENA Act, to institutionalize transparency and accountability on public finance. In a LEDAC meeting this morning, the President also instructed both houses to take a closer look at the 4 bills and prioritize the passage as soon as possible. Present during the LEDAC were Senate President Vicente Soto III, House Speaker Faustino D. III, and Majority Leader Sandro Marcos and other congressional leaders. The LEDAC also agreed on the timeliness, or rather timelines, for the passage of the General Appropriations Bill and the submission of the enrolled bill for the President's signature.
The Anti-Dynasty Bill prohibits individuals from running for or holding public office if they have a relative up to the 4th degree of consanguinity or affinity who is an incumbent official at the national or local level. On the other hand, the proposed Independent People's Commission Act aims to expand the powers and transparency mechanisms of the Commission to make it fully accountable, transparent, and empowered to act against corruption across government sectors, not only in infrastructure. The proposed Party List Reform Act aims to overhaul the Philippine party list system to ensure genuine representation of the marginalized and underrepresented sectors by introducing stronger safeguards and stricter screening of party list group and their nominees. The proposed CADENA Act seeks to enhance transparency in government spending, mandating the full disclosure of all government transaction documents through a secure digital public ledger system. In a statement, Executive Secretary Ralph Recto said President Marcos also wants Congress to consult key stakeholders to ensure that the 4 priority bills are comprehensive and well-crafted. Citing the importance and urgency of the proposed measures, Recto said the invitation to participate in crafting the bill should be extended to groups of all political persuasions.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang announced on Tuesday that the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council or LEDAC has approved the proposed timeline for the passage of the 2026 National Budget Plan. The approval was made during the LEDAC meeting at the Malacañang Palace in Manila Tuesday morning to discuss legislative priorities, according to Palace Press Officer Claire Castro. Senate President Vicente Soto III, House Speaker Faustino D. III, and House Majority Leader Ilocos Norte 1st District Representative Ferdinand Alexander Sandro Marcos were among the congressional leaders present at the LEDAC meeting. The Senate on December 2 formally opened the period of amendments for House Bill 4058, or the proposed 2026 General Appropriations Act, marking one of the final stages before the Chamber finalizes its version of next year's national budget. The proposed 6.793 trillion pesos budget for 2026, aligned with the medium-term fiscal program, aims to gradually reduce deficit and debt while creating jobs and cutting poverty to single digits by the end of President Marcos's term. On December 4, Malacañang hoped that Congress would fast-track the passage of the proposed 2026 national budget, warning that the reliance on a reenacted 2025 appropriations could pose challenges to government operations. A reenacted budget is a continuation of the previous year's appropriations and is used when a new budget is not enacted on time.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has appointed former Presidential Communications Office (PCO) Undersecretary Sherbet Karen Maralit as a new board member of the Manila Economic and Cultural Office or MECO. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro confirmed to Palace reporters Maralit's new government assignment. President Marcos signed Maralit's appointment paper on December 2. Maralit replaced former PCO Secretary J. Ruiz, who assumed the post in July this year after his brief stint as the government's communications head. Maralit previously held the post of PCO Undersecretary for Operations, Administration, finance, and government-owned or controlled corporations representing the agency at international conferences on transparency and access to information, including as rapporteur at the 15th International Conference of Information Commissioners, or ICIC, in Albania in 2024. Before her tenure at the PCO, Maralit served as Chief of Staff to the late Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile and to Senator Loren Legarda.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, is set to issue the guidelines for the immediate implementation of adjustments in the salary and subsistence allowance of all military and uniformed personnel, or MUP. This is the DBM welcomed Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s move to increase the MUP's base pay and subsistence allowance. DBM Acting Secretary Rolando Toledo, in a statement, said, they commend President Marcos for approving the increase in salary and subsistence allowance for military and uniformed personnel who dedicate their lives to safeguarding the nation. Under Executive Order, or EO 107, signed by President Marcos on December 3, the updated base pay schedule of all MUP will be implemented in 3 tranches, starting January 1 of 2026. The second and third tranches will take effect on January 1, 2027 and January 1, 2028 respectively, according to the EO. EO 107 covers all personnel under the Department of National Defense, Department of the Interior and Local Government, Philippine Coast Guard, Bureau of Corrections, and the National Mapping and Resource Information Authority. Meanwhile, the daily subsistence allowance of all uniformed personnel will also be increased to 350 pesos from the current 150 pesos effective January 1, 2026. The subsistence allowance of all military personnel has already been raised to 350 pesos this year, following the issuance of EO 84 on March 14. The funding requirements for the implementation of the base pay and subsistence allowance hike will come from available appropriations under the 2026 General Appropriations Act and any other available appropriations subject to budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules. EO 107 also creates an Interagency Technical Working Group, or IATWG, that will conduct a comprehensive review of the MUP pension system. The IATWG is composed of representatives from the DBM, Department of Finance, Bureau of the Treasury, and the Government Service Insurance System.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, or DHSUD, and its key shelter agency, Social Housing Finance Corporation, or SHFC, delivered early Christmas gift to the beneficiaries of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s expanded Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino, or 4PH program in Pasig City, with the awarding of 21 million pesos check to the Centennial Sunrise Homeowners Association Incorporated. The check was meant for the acquisition of the land occupied by the beneficiaries of SHFC's Enhanced Community Mortgage Program, or ECMP, one of the modalities under the expanded 4PH program. The payment for the landowner will pave the way for the community's transition to legitimate and secure land ownership. In addition, SHFC turned over a grant of over 84,000 pesos to cover the documentary stamp tax on the mortgage. This is part of the transformative approach of the ECMP, wherein it focuses not only on land acquisition, but also on other benefits that will improve the lives of its beneficiaries. SHFC President and Chief Executive Officer Federico Laxa personally handed over the checks during a simple ceremony with the officers and members of the Centennial Sunrise Homeowners Association. DHSUD Secretary Jose Ramon Aliling said in a news release that this is an early Christmas from Philippine President Marcos Jr. May it serve as a new hope and inspiration to countrymen to work harder and be a part of nation building. Alongside the turnover of checks, Deputy Administrator Lee Robert Britannico of the Metropolitan Water Works and Sewerage System Regulatory Office, or MWSSRO, announced that qualified members of the Centennial Sunrise HOA can avail of the Enhanced Lifeline Program, or ELP, a government-supported initiative that provides discounted water rates to eligible low-income consumers. The assistance follows the Memorandum of Understanding signed by SHFC and MWSSRO RO on December 5. Centennial Sunrise HOA is composed of 175 members. It is one of the 5 ECMP communities that received their Certificate of Lot Award from President Marcos during the National Housing Expo on October 23 in Pasay City. Headquartered in Makati, SHFC is a key shelter agency under the DHSUD.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, has provided 7.846 million pesos worth of humanitarian aid to families affected by Tropical Depression Wilma, an official reported Tuesday. Based on the DSWD's Disaster Response Operations Management Information and Communication, or DROMIC report, a total of 4,157 families remain in evacuation centers due to the effects of Wilma. Most of the internally displaced persons, or IDPs, are in Romblon, Albay, Camarines Norte, Masbate, and several areas across western, central, and eastern Visayas. In a statement, Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao of the Disaster Response Management Group, or DRMG, said the SWD's concerned field offices have been continuously coordinating with the affected local government units, or LGUs, to assess the needs of the affected families and individuals. The field offices have distributed family food packs, or FFPs, ready-to-eat food, or RTEFs, boxes, non-food items, or NFIs, and other emergency relief services. Despite nearing the year end, Dumlao assured the affected families that the DSWD is ready to respond to the request of LGUs for augmentation support. Dumlao said the proactive preparations of the department are in line with the directive of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to ensure that families affected by disasters are immediately provided with food and other basic needs. Aside from the IDPs, the DSWD has also extended assistance to individuals and families who were stranded in various ports due to the weather disturbance. Some 1,900 stranded passengers in the Sipit Port in Agusan del Norte, Matnog Port in Albay, and Castilla Pilar and Bulan ports in Sorsogon were provided with RTEF boxes. Dumlao reaffirmed the DSWD's commitment to sustain relief operations and extended continuous support for the recovery of affected families, ensuring that no Filipino is left behind in times of calamity.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Agriculture said the National Food Authority, or NFA, has successfully freed up warehouse spaces through an auction of almost 16,000 metric tons of aging rice stocks. In a statement, DA Secretary Francisco Chu said this is part of the agency's move to sustain local palay, or unhusked rice, procurement to help Filipino farmers. The NFA logged 30 prospective bidders with 68 sets of bid documents covering 618,660 bags. However, it only recommended 13 out of the 27 bidders who actually submitted their bids for 31 lots. After being recommended for an award, the 13 bidders advanced while the 14 others were dropped for insufficient bid bonds, faulty documents, or offers below minimum volume. NFA Administrator Larry Lacson said the bidding result allows us to award 315,000 bags, a volume that frees up warehouse space for more palay procurement to boost farmers' income. Lacson added that consumers will benefit from the bidding process as it ranged within the expected amount, or from 22.52 pesos per kilo to 25 8.16 pesos per kilo. To date, the NFA has 1.2 million bags of aging stocks in warehouses nationwide. Chu Laurel earlier called for the restoration of the regulatory powers of the NFA to free up its warehouse spaces and help protect both local farmers and consumers through palay procurement.
Dateline Malacañang.
Finally, for Dateline Malacañang, to further strengthen workplace strategies aligned with Republic Act 11036, or the Mental Health Act, the Civil Service Commission or CSC has approved the grant of a maximum of 5 days wellness leave for eligible government officials and employees. Under CSC Resolution number 2501292, the Commission emphasized provisions of Joint Administrative Order number 2023-000 issued with the Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE and the Department of Health or DOH, which identifies mental health as among the priority areas for workplace health promotion interventions. This is reinforced by findings from a 2025 Global Workplace Report showing that Filipino workers have the second highest stress levels in Southeast Asia, driven by unhealthy lifestyles and heavy workloads. This underscored the need for workplace policies that promote both mental and physical well-being. CSC Chairperson Marilyn Baruayap in a statement said the wellness leave is a proactive response to the realities faced by workforce today. By giving employees the space to rest, recover, and care for themselves, we reinforce a public environment that is compassionate, resilient, and more responsive to the needs of the Filipino people. The wellness leave may be taken consecutively for a maximum of 3 days at a time or in separate consecutive days. It is non-cumulative, non-commutable, and forfeited if not used within the calendar year. The wellness leave may be availed for mental health care, physical wellness activities, or for general break from work. It is distinct from existing leave benefits such as vacation and sick leave. It is intended specifically for wellness and recovery. Applications must be recommended by the immediate supervisor and submitted to the head of office for approval. Filing shall follow the same procedures for vacation leave, sick leave, and other leave privileges adopted by the agency. Applications must be filed at least 5 days before the intended date of availment. For emergency cases, filing shall be done immediately upon return to work. To promote a safe space for those availing of WL for mental health reasons, all information related to the applicant's mental health condition shall be treated with strict confidentiality and in compliance with the Data Privacy Act of 2012. The policy shall take effect 15 days after its publication in newspaper general circulation, with a follow-up advisory to announce the official publication and effectivity date. The Commission affirms its commitment to promoting a healthy, supportive, and enabling work environment for all government workers, one that cultivates resilience, uplifts workplace morale, and strengthens the civil services capacity to deliver excellent and compassionate service to its citizen by also considering the overall wellness of the workforce that compromises the public sector.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.